Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Actor Kevin Spacey faces a string of sexual assault charges in the United Kingdom. Plus,
what should I say? I know who you are. I was going to say, I thought that looked like you.
Body camera video shows Anchorman actor David Koechner failing a field sobriety test. And
he's still full of this rage, correct?
Yes.
You see it in his eyes.
Yes.
He's angry.
Yes.
And you think that he's going to maybe kill you in this moment.
Yes.
Accused killer Danielle Redlick testifies in her own defense. But first, opening statements are presented in the Candy the Dog civil trial.
The image of Candy getting shot is burned into his memory.
He had no other option but to shoot the pit bull to avoid serious injury or death.
Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmire. Opening statements are presented in the Candy the Dog civil trial as a Florida dog owner works to bring justice for the death of his beloved dog. Dog owner Rodney Jacobson filed a civil suit against Zachary Dieterle, saying Dieterle wrongfully shot his dog Candy. It happened on Dieterle's father's property back in 2016. Jacobson, who had permission to store his boat on the property, was cleaning it. Candy was off leash when she approached Dieterle. He says the dog was in an attack stance. After that, Dieterle pulled out his revolver and shot the dog twice. The Sarasota County Sheriff's Office says Dieterle was not charged because he had a permit to carry the weapon. They say he was also within his rights to use deadly force because he feared for his life. Jacobson says Candy had no history of aggression and was only barking at Dieterle because she did not recognize him. He says the ultimate goal of the trial is for the Sarasota Sheriff's Office to determine the shooting was not justified and to file criminal charges against Dieterle. During opening statements, Jacobson's attorney said the trauma of the event has lasting effects on their client.
In the years following Candy's death, Rod would tell you that he still had nightmares about Candy's death. He has nightmares of chasing Mr. Dieterle and watching Candy get shot in front of him over and over and over again, with him powerless to do anything. His wife, Cindy, will tell you all about those nightmares and those experiences of what she witnessed. Every so often, Rod will start crying when thinking about Candy. The image of Candy getting shot is burned into his memory, and he will never be able to think of Candy without thinking about her getting shot and dying.
On the other side, Dieterle's attorneys argued he was scared for his life and acted only to protect himself.
Zach made several attempts to keep the pit bull away, to include yelling at it, cautiously backing up, kicking dirt at it, stomping the ground, ultimately kicking it, and continuously yelling at the pit bull and Mr. Jacobson the entire time, asking him to control his animal. Mr. Jacobson did nothing to help Zach. The pit bull circled around Zach multiple times, never being deterred by Zach's efforts to repel the attack, coming back directly towards Zach, lunging in and out at him, at times coming within a couple inches of Zach. And only after Zach had done all he could do to try and repel the attack, he had no other option but to shoot the pit bull to avoid serious injury or death.
Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Taylor Koss and co-host Terri Austin. Taylor, the argument here is self-defense, which is pretty clear. How does that work with a dog, though? Should we expect a dog expert to testify and explain what the dog was doing in this quote-unquote attack stance?
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me. No, I would not expect to hear from a dog expert. This is a self-defense case. First, it's important to note it's not a criminal matter. This is a civil case. But the Florida law on unjustification self-defense is fairly clear. It appears to be the reasonable person standard. So the question really isn't necessarily whether he felt that way in that moment, but if a reasonable person in his position would have felt that way. Was his feelings and belief reasonable? And taking that into account, we don't really need a dog expert to talk about what the dog's positioning means. We need to hear from him how he felt in that time, talk about the surroundings, what really was going on, hear it from both sides, and then a jury could think about, were his actions in this situation reasonable under the circumstances? And did he actually need to use deadly force because he actually believed, and it was a reasonable belief, that he was about to either be lethally injured or die?
Makes sense. Now, Terri, what were some of the strengths and weaknesses of the openings that you saw so far?
I think both openings were extremely strong. I think if you listen to the plaintiff, he's talking about the fact that this was a trained dog. He wasn't an attack dog. He wasn't a vicious dog. He'd not ever attacked anyone before. If you listen to the defendant, you're saying that he had fear for his life and that he had to do it in self-defense. Same story, two different versions, and we'll have to see what the corroborating evidence is in the rest of the case.
Yeah, and who the jury ultimately ends up deciding based on credibility and belief. I think that's going to be a major player in this case. And in Florida, a woman accused of dressing up as a clown and murdering her future husband's wife appears in court ahead of her coming trial. Prosecutors say Sheila Keene Warren shot and killed Marlene Warren back in 1990. They allege Keene Warren dressed up as a clown and rang Marlene's doorbell before shooting her in the face. Keene Warren later married Marlene Warren's husband, Michael, and the couple moved to Tennessee. She was arrested in 2017 and has been serving time in Palm Beach County Jail since then. At a hearing on Tuesday, defense attorneys argue the state secretly interviewed suspects in the case, including a man named Edward Barr, who reportedly confessed to the crime. They motioned for the trial to be delayed because of this new information.
Essentially, what the state's doing is striking exculpatory witnesses and listing inculpatory witnesses and then saying, oh, well, we're doing the defense a favor. That's not doing us a favor. They're striking a man who confessed to the crime.
The guy in prison?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Who they've been investigating for years now. They've flown to Maine, flown to Texas. Clearly they have enough suspicion to where they've investigated him and not the countless other people who've been.
Is that Barr?
Barr, yes.
Okay.
Barr.
All right.
Deputy or Detective Michael Harrison, who they did relist, Claude Poitras, who's the one person who put Sheila Keene Warren in the car 6 weeks prior to the murder, which would explain why her hair is in the car.
The judge denied the motion to continue the trial. While an official trial date has not been set, the judge indicated he hopes to find a date in either this October or January 2023. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a recognizable comedian is pulled over for drunk driving while on tour in Ohio. But first, we head to Florida where accused murderer Danielle Redlick is on the stand. Welcome back. Both sides rest shortly after prosecutors cross-examined defendant Danielle Redlick as she continued testifying in her own defense Wednesday. Redlick is being tried for the stabbing death of her husband 3 years ago. Danielle is charged with second-degree murder and evidence tampering and could be sentenced to life in prison if convicted for the murder of her husband, Michael Redlick. Danielle claims she killed her husband in self-defense when she stabbed him in their Winter Park home in 2019. The two had been married for nearly 20 years and had 2 children together. Danielle's defense attorney said their relationship had a history of abuse and cheating. The couple had also reportedly filed for divorce by the time of Michael's death. 911 calls revealed Danielle initially told dispatchers that Michael stabbed himself and had a heart attack. Investigators say she waited several hours before calling for help the night of his death. On Tuesday, Danielle took the stand in her own defense, telling jurors she stabbed her husband while he held her down against their kitchen counter. Cross-examination began Wednesday morning as prosecutors asked Danielle about the night Michael died.
He's on top of you, pressing you with all that rage and all that might, and you are, as I understand it, able to, with him on top, reach over with your left hand or right hand to locate the knife?
My right hand, that was the only free hand I had.
And he's still full of this rage, correct?
Yes.
You see it in his eyes.
Yes.
He's angry.
Yes.
And you think that he's gonna maybe kill you in this moment.
Yes.
And it's in that moment that you take the knife and you jab it into his shoulder.
Right.
All right, Terry, I don't see it there, but were there points in Danielle's cross where the prosecution got her and maybe exposed a lie?
I think Danielle Redlick held up extremely well under cross-examination, and that's despite the fact that the prosecution was very adversarial. There were no real gotcha points, in my opinion. She admitted what she needed to admit. For instance, she admitted that she threw eggs at the car, and even though they were trying to make it seem as though she also threw eggs at him, she said, no, I threw eggs at the car. Maybe when he opened the door, the eggs fell on him, and that's how the eggs got on his pants. So I thought all in all, even when the prosecution was trying to catch her in a lie, she was very good at admitting certain points of those lies. So I don't think there were any gotcha moments. I think that she's admitted she's a hypocrite when she sent the email to him saying, you know, look, you've been cheating. She was cheating too. So good job on preparation and good job on her cross.
Yeah. Now, Taylor, I guess this is a follow-up question. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't something that you see. But if you were Danielle Redlick's attorney, how would you rehabilitate her on redirect?
So these are what I think are the biggest issues facing her in this case. And thus, they need to be ironed out on redirect so that the jury doesn't have questions. One, her evolving version of events. How did we get from heart attack to he tried to kill himself with a knife to, oh, yeah, just kidding, I stabbed him? One. And then two, what I think a lot of the jurors will view as, you know, inhumane behavior, which is how could you possibly not have called 911 right away? And is this true that you were surfing dating websites on your phone prior to calling 911? There needs to be reasonable explanations for this behavior, or else the jury's going to hold it against her.
All right, we'll see how that goes. But as we said, both sides have rested. Next will be closing arguments. And of course, we've got you covered here at the Law and Crime Network for gavel to gavel coverage. Also in Florida, the defense rested its case after testimony continued into its fourth day Wednesday, as the defendant's mother takes the stand in the resentencing trial of Alan Wade, a man convicted of murder more than a decade ago when he and 3 others buried a Jacksonville couple alive. Wade, along with Michael James Jackson, Tiffany Cole, and Bruce Nixon, were convicted in 2008 for their involvement in the 2005 murder of Reggie and Carol Sumner. A jury found the 4 guilty of digging a hole in a remote wooded area in Georgia before kidnapping the Sumners. The group stole from the couple's home, then forced them into the trunk of their own car. They later forced the Sumners to share their bank account information before burying them alive. Wade and Jackson are being resentenced separately after a change in Florida law which requires a unanimous jury decision for the death penalty. On Wednesday, Wade's mother took the stand. She told the jury about his childhood and the effect on him when she and his father, Alan Wade Sr., split up.
Who got custody of Alan and Andrew in the divorce?
I did.
And after the move to the home on Long Drive, is Alan Sr., does he offer to come get the boys for the summer?
He did one summer. I think it was the first year we lived in the house. He said he'd take Andrew for a month and then he'd take Alan for a month. We got Andrew and that lasted a week, and then he never did take Alan for his turn.
And how did that make Alan feel?
Alan was crushed. That's when Alan started getting mad at me because I took his dad away. He hated me for that. He never got over me leaving his dad. He never got over his dad leaving him.
Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, Kevin Spacey heads overseas where he faces multiple charges of sexual assault. Plus, body camera footage of David Koechner shows the Office actor failing a field sobriety test. Welcome back. Actor David Koechner of The Office and Anchorman is arrested on the way to Comic-Con after failing a field sobriety test. It happened on June 4th in Lawrence County, Ohio, about 2 hours east of Cincinnati. Officers pulled Koechner over for several lane violations. After that, Koechner told them he was traveling from Cincinnati and heading for West Virginia. Koechner also said he had only consumed 1 beer before getting behind the wheel. After reportedly refusing a breathalyzer, officers asked Koechner to perform a series of field sobriety tests. In the end, officers determined he failed the exam, and the actor was arrested. Take a look at the body cam footage of the traffic stop.
What you got?
19.
Okay.
Alcohol.
Gotcha.
Glossy eyes. I can smell that car when I walked up to the car.
Where's he from?
California.
What's he doing out here?
He says he's going to Comic-Con in West Virginia.
How much we had to drink tonight? One beer or one shot of liquor or what?
No, one beer. Is that a 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
You can keep picking up resume where you left off.
Yes, sir.
You remember where you left off?
Well, 5.
Okay.
4, actually.
Just keep facing my car. Did you put your hands behind your back?
141 on Hacklock Henry, Zebra Henry, 8678.
You're under arrest for RDI, operating a vehicle while impaired.
If Koechner is found guilty of the misdemeanor, he could face a minimum of 3 days in jail or a maximum of 6 months. Koechner was previously arrested for a DUI earlier this year. Terri, how will this video be used against Koechner, and should we expect jail time or maybe some mandated alcohol abuse classes?
Well, I think he's going to get both jail time and the abuse classes. Listen, as you mentioned, this is the second time in 6 months. So they should be taking it very seriously in Ohio. His first time was on New Year's Eve, actually, in California. So I do think he's going to get some jail time. He'll be taking classes, and they will be using that video. He refused the alcohol breathalyzer test, as well as he should have. He has a right to do that. But that means that that video is going to be all the more important in the case against him.
Yeah, just a little legal tip. You do have the right to not take a breathalyzer test, but in most states that does automatically suspend your license. Just a little heads up. So Taylor, what are standard field sobriety tests and how bad was his body cam footage?
So the field sobriety tests, or the standard field sobriety tests, are a suite of tests, so to speak, that the officers can perform curbside. And this helps an officer gauge whether or not there's probable cause to detain the individual, to bring him back to the precinct, to have him blow in the machine. And, these tests include, the old finger to nose, the one-legged stand, and a test that was featured prominently in the video, which is the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, which is when you see the officer holding the light to his eye and making him look back and forth. What he's looking for there is an involuntary jerk of the eye, which is supposedly a symptom of intoxication. Defense attorneys like myself say this is an inherently untrustworthy test, but it is frequently used to determine intoxication curbside in this country.
Yeah, even if you move I think I'm getting it too. It's balancing. I promise I'm sober. Don't anyone test me, but we'll keep going. When we come back, Kevin Spacey faces charges of sexual assault. We look ahead to the actor's upcoming court appearance in the United Kingdom. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. Actor Kevin Spacey has been formally charged in the UK. British police say he will appear in a London court this week to face his arraignment. Spacey is charged with 4 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of causing a person to engage in penetrative sexual activity without consent for alleged sexual offenses against 3 men in Britain. The alleged incidents happened while Spacey served as the artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre in London between March 2005 and August 2008, and another in 2013. If Spacey hadn't traveled to the UK voluntarily, officials would have extradited him from the US to formally be charged. This isn't the actor's first run in with claims against him. He's faced more than a dozen sexual misconduct allegations since 2017. Spacey's acting career came to an abrupt halt when actor Anthony Rapp accused him of assaulting him at a party when Rapp was just a teenager. The UK hearing is expected to happen Thursday morning, during which the magistrate will determine if Spacey will be released on bail to await trial. All right, Taylor, whenever I hear bail and famous people and traveling, I think to myself, is this person a flight risk? So could Spacey be held up until this trial?
I mean, quite frankly, I would be stunned if he's held pre-trial here. He's a well-known public figure, but I think the best argument in his favor is he's making it easy for them. Even though these charges are decades old, he would argue, he's immediately flying over to London for the arraignment the day that's requested. He could have made it extremely difficult for them to extradite him and go through that process and take months upon months. Who knows in this climate? It could be a year. So I think the argument that he's voluntarily facing these charges, that he's going across the pond to face them in person, not causing any problems, I think the judge will probably send nominal bail, and nominal bail for a celebrity of his stature, probably $1 million, but they're not going to hold him pretrial. I highly doubt that.
I would agree as well. Now, Terri, we've seen it in the Johnny Depp defamation trials in the UK and the US. There are different systems, both of them, apples to oranges in some respects. But what are those differences, and how may those differences affect Spacey's case?
Well, you're right. It's apples to oranges. Look, for the Depp case, it was the difference between a defamation and a defamation, one in the UK, one in the US. They were both civil trials. Now, definitely there were differences. One was a judge in the UK, one was a jury here, evidentiary differences. And so, you know, I think you compare those two. But here we have Spacey being charged with multiple counts of sexual assault. And it's going to be in the Westminster Magistrates Court. So that's going to be a different court. It's a criminal court. We'll see how that pans out. He obviously has rights in that court, but it'll be different than he is if he had been sued and charged here.
All right, we'll continue to follow that case and others. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.